Hi, welcome to Mocha Wave Talks. Here we are, we're in season 2, and I'm happy to be here with Dylan Dozier, someone I've just recently met. And we were talking about books, and I found out he's writing a book, and I'm really excited about that. Yeah, here we're in Beeville, Texas, and I'm finding more and more there are people in Beeville. You wouldn't expect it. We're a small town, but in Beeville, I see people that are artistic and talented and going forward with the arts. So, do you want to introduce yourself so they let them know who you are?
My name's Dylan Dozier. I'm currently working as the editor of the Beeville Bee Picayune, which is the newspaper here in Beeville. We are incorporated by South Texas News. We've got 6 newspapers. When I'm not writing for the paper, I'm working on, the project that we talked about the first time that we met.
And one thing I was curious about is with your writing. So, do you feel like the reporter writing or the newspaper type writing, does that help you as an author for fiction?
I think so. I think that most of the writing that I do outside of the paper when I'm just writing for myself is Dylan Dozier, you know, uh, hopeful author. Um, it's like I just try to let go and not control the story. I just, whatever pops into my head, if it's one line or it's like a whole stanza of a poem or maybe a scene, I just try to let go. With the newspaper, I'm normally taking somebody else's story, something that's already occurred, and I'm basically just listening to them tell a story. I write it down and then I organize it into a narrative that people can follow whenever they pick the paper up. So I think it helps in the editing process. I don't think the creatively, as far as uh, inspiring stories or anything like that, I don't know if it's much of a help, but definitely the editing process, it helps dial it down.
And the reason I was asking that is I know that there's a lot of like classic authors who were also newspapermen
Oh yeah.
or women. Yeah.
And a lot of those guys are responsible for me wanting to be a writer.
Can you tell me a little bit about some of them that
Oh yeah, I can
inspired?
talk about that all day long. Hemingway was he was the first author that got me into reading literature. Um, and I read The Sun Also Rises,
Mhm.
and I had a couple false starts. Finally got through it. When I got done, I was like, oh my God, like I think I want to do this. And I dove into him and found out that he started out as a reporter. He didn't have a degree. He didn't train. He just jumped right into writing. And he had a theory called the iceberg theory. And it was basically keep everything short and only show what's needed. And
Uh-huh.
just know that there's an underlying message, right? And people kind of make fun of him for his brevity.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
but I do think that that comes from, it definitely stemmed from his time as a reporter. Um,
I know, like with Hemingway, you first read it, you're like, wow, that's so short, so simple. But the
mhm,
more you look at it, you're like, like you said, the iceberg theory,
mhm.
there more there is for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of my favorite is the Hills Like White Elephants. It's a
Mhm.
short story, but it looks very simple. They never really mention what it's really talking about.
Yeah.
It's all through the symbolism, was what the people are looking at, right?
Mhm.
It doesn't even get into their thoughts, which I think is
No.
interesting. It's totally third person objective, right? It's
Mhm.
completely objective, which is I always think reporter, you're trying to be objective.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
Just a fly on the wall.
yeah.
And that's that's one of those that like if you're a short story writer, that's a perfect place. That's a perfect story to start because, it's about a guy who's trying to get his girlfriend or wife to abort a baby,
Mhm.
but they never talk about the fact that she's pregnant.
Right.
They He never says the word abortion. It's what does he refer to it as? It's like
No,
just letting the air in.
that's what he's, yeah.
It's like just letting the air in. And it's her just sitting there like looking out at the hills and him drinking.
Yeah.
Like him just walking around drinking. It's like,
I know when I first teach that to my students, they're like, what happened? They're like, people sitting around drinking. I'm like,
yeah. Which is, and I didn't think about it until just now, but it kind of feels like if you were to put yourself there, like I'm gonna go back and reread it now. But there is like something missing, right? There's a void,
Uh-huh.
and he's explaining it. So I never thought about
That's the elephant in the room. They're avoiding it, right?
yeah. So it does like the whole situation just feels like this weird vacuum that they're caught in. It's the cool thing about literature is it's like looking at a painting.
Mhm.
Like the good painters, they make everyone stand around and look at the painting and go, what do you think he meant by that? I think that's what's cool about like good literature
Yeah.
is that you read the book and then, you feel a certain way about it, you think a certain way and you mull it over, and then you go talk to somebody else who's read it and they point out different things that you never saw or you never
Mhm.
considered. And then you've created a dialogue around what, 10 pages?
Exactly.
That's how long that short story is, right?
Right. Yes.
So,
It's pretty short. And not only that, but it's never going to be the same story it was in 1920s because
no,
we're looking at it with completely different perspective.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
and I think, he was probably looked at it from a different perspective when he looked at it from when he wrote it in the
Mhm.
20s to when he looked at it maybe later.
Oh, certainly.
I'm sure because his mindset changed
Yeah.
as he grew. So that was an interesting little discussion
Yeah.
because I tracked a little bit, but it kind of goes together.
No, it does. Yeah,
And
definitely.
so tell me about what you're writing.
So I'm working on basically a collection of, not to be self-deprecating, but basically just rambling. And I, you know, I struggled with perfectionism at the beginning where it was like I was trying to make every sentence perfect, every word perfect. And, I think you have to be, that's what the editing process is
Yes.
for, right? So
It's
I,
kind of like you have to separate the writer from the editor in you.
yeah, kind of a collection of it's essays, it's poems.
Okay.
Uh, I would say 75% of it was written on cocktail napkins at
Okay.
various bars across the United States.
That sounds very Hemingway.
Yeah. Well, I jumped from Hemingway to Kerouac. So I
Okay.
went from like the super serious rambler who was like high class and did it classy to, like pretty much a bum guy. Those are my two first literary inspirations, if that tells you anything. But yeah, I mean it's a basically just a collection of, what I felt in that precise moment.
Mhm.
Some of it's, looking back, some of it's looking forward, some of it is just talking about what's going on in the room. Um, and it is called, I'm the working title right now is Normal Street Blues. Uh, and that stems from my, the reason I decided to like pick up a pen and write, like actively do it. It's actually songwriters. I'm a songwriting junkie. I like breaking down the song. Um, and I think my favorite songwriter is Evan Felker. He's a lead singer at Turnpike Troubadours. He is basically writing literature in 3 minutes.
Wow.
He's telling whole stories through a song. Um, and my favorite album by them is Goodbye Normal Street. It completely like it. I was obsessed with it for months in
Mhm.
my early 20s. And so the title is kind of a tribute to them. Um, and it's also kind of a nod to me leaving Normal Street, right? Leaving what I was used to
Mhm.
and, taking off to travel by myself and try to figure out how to write.
So did anybody say you could be a writer, or did you just figure that out yourself?
Yeah, nobody ever told me that. I think, in my ego-filled bedroom one night, I was just like, I think I'm pretty sure I can do this. Um, I read my whole life and
Mhm.
it kind of, uh, I was, I don't know, maybe a lot of people go through this like in their early 20s when they're trying to figure out like what they want to do. I was working construction, just, hanging out and basically just trying to pay the bills and, have enough money to shoot pool and drink on the weekends. But I kept reading. Like I read my whole life, got away from it, then came back and found good literature, found good music. And I was like, I don't know how to do any of this,
Hmm.
but if there's one thing I can sit in this room and do, it's read, pick up a pen and a piece of paper, write,
Mhm.
you know. I don't really need anybody to teach me how to do it. And yeah, nobody ever was like, hey, you should be a writer. It's just like, I'm gonna do this. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people are afraid, like my students, and they think, oh, I can never do this.
Mhm.
And they're afraid of writing, or they're afraid they get it wrong, right? I
Yeah.
think that's one of the things is you get so you're inhibited because you're like, oh, if I don't do it perfect or if I don't do it right, then
Mhm. Well, and I think you can either be, there's like two delusions. Like I think we have to be delusional, right? You can either be delusional about your capability
mhm,
and pursue success, or you can be delusional about your lack of ability and be victim to your anxieties, your fears about failing.
that's true.
Because if you haven't failed and you haven't tried,
That's
then you
true.
don't know whether or not you can actually succeed. So I think once you choose your delusion, then you're good.
Yeah.
Like choose to delude yourself into success.
Like if you have a blank page, it's a blank page.
Yeah.
But if you have words on it, that at least that's something you can work on, right?
Yeah.
You have like it's kind of like you have the clay. Now you can
Mhm.
mold it, right? Now you can fix this.
This is probably like I'm sure you do this as a writing instructor. Um, like, where you just tell people like, hey, you have 5 minutes to pump out
Mhm.
200 words or whatever. And like, oh, well, what do I write about? Like, how many paragraphs does it have to be? And it's like, I don't care, just write.
Mhm.
And I think as a disciplined writer, you have to do that where you just walk up and, it's like the old little bit of wisdom, like get out of your own way. It's
Mhm.
like stop thinking about what you're going to write and just start typing. Like tell yourself something, write a letter to your ex that you hate, uh, write a letter to your boss that you hate, write down something that you're grateful for.
Yeah.
Like just start writing. And then once you start, you will kind of seamlessly fall into whatever it is that you're supposed to write or that you want to write. I know I said 70% of this first book was written on cocktail napkins. The other 30%, and actually I might need to change that number. It's probably 50% on cocktail napkins, 50% in the notes on my phone.
Mhm.
It's like you can write anytime, anywhere. And also a thing that I just started doing is I won't talk into my phone. I will open up my notes, hit the microphone, and just talk because sometimes you know, people go, I'm bad at English. It's like, what language do you speak? English? Okay. Do you speak any other language? No. How did you make it 20 years being bad at English? Like if you can talk, you can write. I mean, writing is just
Mhm.
the kinesthetic thing. You're communicating here, you're kinesthetically communicating here.
Mhm.
So like if you think you're a bad writer, talk into your phone, transcribe it,
Uh-huh.
and then become an editor. Like then just go in and erase all the stuff that you don't need anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
Get the work out. It doesn't matter how pretty it is. Just put the thing out there. And then once it's out there, like you're the author. Now you're Dylan the author. Now you're Kathy the author, once that book comes out. And then at that point, then I my plan is to kind of dial it back. And then instead of rambling around and looking for inspiration, it's going to be sit down at the desk, work on the craft, try to write a version of Hills Like, or not a version, but my own Hills Like White Elephants, something that, people will look at and be like, okay, everything he did here was intentional.
Mhm.
And, maybe it works, it doesn't. But that's not up to me. That's up to the reader, right? But, just trying to get to a point where,
So you find like that moment in time,
yeah,
just that moment, that slice of life.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like I was thinking about it this morning. I was walking around at the ranch and I was like, why do writers want to be writers? Because it's so frustrating, right?
That's
Because
a good question.
you sit down on the computer and you're
Wonderful question.
like, do I really want to do this? Um, but I think for me, it's like like you said, like creating a place and a time and letting people walk around in it. And that place and time only exists as a writer, it only exists inside your head until you put it on paper. And then, so just, I want to give people a place and a time that already exists in here and just let them walk around in it, whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
So that's the goal after book one,
Okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's important to think about, is like, because sometimes I think, why do I write? And it's kind of like, I can't, how do I say this? I can't not write.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I don't know, it's not really a compulsion, but it's just like something
I say that all the time.
you have to do.
Yeah.
Right.
I say that all the time. I'm like, it's just a compulsion. People in the office will be like, well, like, what do you do? Like, because I'll be in the office and I'll pull 60 hours in here. I'm not only working on news, I'm writing and like trying to get better as a writer. And they're like, well, like, how long can you write? I'm like, it's just a compulsion. Like, I feel a need to type. I feel a need to write something in a notebook.
So with your plans, right? So you're planning to go on, you're going to publish. Is there any way that viewers can follow you or keep up with your progress on that?
So I am going to put everything out on Instagram.
Okay.
I'm active on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
At Dylan Dozier Writes. That's my Instagram handle, and then on Facebook, just my name.
Okay.
I don't post actively on Facebook. I post on Instagram. It carries over to Facebook.
Yeah.
And most of the stuff, I have some poems that will be featured in the book on my Instagram.
Okay.
I'm not actively posting my writing there. I like to operate under like live first, write second. So basically, like all the stuff I do in my life, I put on Instagram. And so any picture that is on my Instagram, it inspired something that's going in this book.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So when the book comes out, that's where the writing and stuff will start to come out. I do have a column that is going in, I think, all 6 papers. So if you're in Beeville or B County, Live Oak County, Refugio County, Goliad County, Karnes County, and San Patricio County, you can pick a newspaper up. I'm running like a 4 or 5 part series. I'm not sure how many it'll turn out to be. It's called 5 Days in Denver. And it's stories about my time there on my writing retreat. So actively, like, or the place that people can go and find my writing right now would be on a newsstand or at stexasnews.com.
Texas. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you going forward and what the author that you are becoming.
Yeah. This is the first time like I'm putting it out there in the public. I have a couple friends that know that this is in the works.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this will be the first time that the outside world gets to know about it. So I'm excited, and I really appreciate you coming by here and chatting with me.
Absolutely. I always like to talk to different people that have different topics and different perspectives. So thank you so much for joining me.